Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am here to give you yet another movie review this week. This week is, well, another movie. This one today is going to be on, it's actually in this one, the Twisted Terror Collections. And it's with the Dr. Gilgo's one. They're both. The one that I'm reviewing is Eyes of a Stranger. Misleading cover, I guess, but the movie's still good. And I'm not really gonna read. I'm gonna show you what the DVD looks like, but I'm not gonna read the info on the back because it's very misleading. So this is what it looks like on the back. On this side and this side, it's just Eyes of a Stranger. On the back, it shows a bunch of creepy stuff that I will get into. Okay, so that's about it. Okay, now this movie, when I looked it up to see when it came out and all that crap, and my phone's over there. So this movie, when I looked it up, and this is what the cover actually looks like on Wikipedia. I don't know if you guys can see that. I can't make it bigger because I don't have an internet connection in my room. It says it's hard to tell because it doesn't have the cast on here, so something tells me that this movie didn't really go into theaters or something. But I do like it. Just doesn't. Or this the person who wrote this didn't give a crap. But the movie came out sometime in 1981. But I'm gonna go in the release portion of this. This is what it says. Eyes of a Stranger was given a wide theatrical release in the United States by Warner Bros. I think that's how you say that. And that's like the company that made the movie. On March 27th, 1981. So I actually would have been. It was like around my, I guess, birthday time, even though technically it wasn't because I wasn't born yet. Debuting #1 at the box office and earning $546,274 its opening weekend, which is actually really good then. It eventually grossed an estimate of $1.1 million. So this movie did extremely well, actually. And anything else worth mentioning? They did edit this though. I think in theaters, and it says the film was originally cut for an R-rated, removing many instances of violence, including a decapitation from the film, leaving only the final. Well, I'll talk about that later. So the final scene was cut, but the uncut was. But it was I have the uncut version. So luckily I have the uncut version, which is awesome because that's all good and fine. So that's about it. I do have so the cast isn't on here, but it is on the credits. So when I'm done reviewing the movie, I will give you the cast because I like to do it that way. So the movie kicks right off with the photographer, and he's just taking pictures. I don't know if he was taking it for a purpose or if he was just randomly just shooting pictures of what he saw. And then he sees actually, I'm going to tell you about the cover real quick. So when I look at the cover, it does look like it's going to be in a cabin because there's like a cabin in the back, and I don't know. You just think it's going to be in the cabin, but it isn't. It's actually in a city. It doesn't say, I don't think, what the city is, but I could be wrong. Let me see if it does. I don't think it does though. I don't think it gives like a specific city or town. It just yeah, it doesn't say what the city is, so I couldn't tell you. So we find out that this woman has been raped and killed, and Mona. This is like a newscast, and it's on a certain channel. I forget the channel, but Mona, Roger England, and Jane are like all the news reporters about it, and they say what happened to this body. Pretty much everything I just said. And Jane says that no one's safe. Jane's the one that cares the most about this. Talk about how no one's safe and whether or not everybody can survive this, pretty much. And they were watching it at the bar, and the bartender name is Al. Tells Debbie to be safe out there and to get home safe, and she's like, "Oh, believe me, I'll be fine after being here all day." So I thought that was funny. So then Debbie leaves the bar because she was I don't forget exactly what she did, but she did something with the bar. I think she was like a waitress or something. And we see this guy following her. And this movie has a lot of creepy parts if you don't want to hear them, by the way, so click off the video now. But we see this guy just following her, and then she bumps into a Arabian. I forget what you call it, but she bumps into that guy. So then she continues to, she goes home, takes a bath, and she closes the window. Why I'm going to say this is because it's going to get important in like a couple of seconds. What else? She's watching like a horror movie back from like the 50s because it's in black and white. What a coincidence, she's watching a horror movie, and this is a horror movie. And I guess the guy calls her. Now, I first was wondering how she got her, how this guy got her number, but we don't really. I think we find out later on how. And this is like back when they couldn't use cell phones. Because it's the 80s. So they didn't have them, and they had the old dial-in. Like, you didn't just dial numbers by just pushing one. You had to use like the little spin thing. I forget what it's called. So he calls this girl, and obviously there's no caller ID, so there's no way that she can know who this guy is. There's no caller ID either. So she answers. At first the guy doesn't say anything, so he calls again. Like I said, there's a lot of creepy stuff. He keeps calling her pretty much, and threatens to rape her pretty much. That's pretty much what happens there. And I was thinking I watched this with my uncle, and he does say like this could be anybody. Like I did say, I know this is back in the 80s. There's no caller ID, but wouldn't you like realize eventually that this is the same person over and over again? So eventually it gets so bad that she calls the police, and what happens is and the police doesn't. Well, they pretty much don't believe him because everyone's using this as like a prank. But she says this is real because it actually is real. She doesn't know his voice, but yet he knows hers. It's like he can see her, and he can because he can see right out, like her apartment, I guess. He's like, okay, well, we'll come over tomorrow, and if it keeps happening, we'll put like some sort of thing on your phone, I guess, so that way it doesn't happen again. And yeah, the police weren't much help because they think that this is just a prank, like I said, because a bunch of kids have been doing this as a prank. We find out the girl's name. Her name is, I think I already said it, but her name is Debbie Olmsley. She's British. She actually was hot, actually, not gonna lie. I can see why you picked this girl to go after. So then Debbie goes back to the bathroom, and the window's open again. So that isn't a good thing. And then we see the guy's right behind her this time. He's actually in the house. So she gets so scared that she grabs a meat cleaver, and somebody knocks, and her boyfriend Jeff answers. And he tries to scare her by having like a creepy mask on him. And obviously she actually does get scared by this and flips out because of all these creepy calls, and she tells him about it. And she's like, "Can I stay over at your place tonight?" He's like, "Sure." Now she's like, "I'll just be a sec, okay?" Now if this was me and I was in this situation, I wouldn't get, because she's gonna go get her stuff and get all ready. She even brushes her hair, gets all fancy. If this was me and this was like a real life situation, was actually happening, I just want to get out of there. I wouldn't hesitate by getting my stuff. I'd be like, you know what, just get out of here. Just if it's me. But I guess Debbie Olmsley's different. Maybe they do things. So then, as she's getting ready, poor Jeff, the mystery guy, because we technically don't know his name yet, the murderer, I'm just going to call him for now, chops Jeff's head off with a meat cleaver, and Debbie hears it, and she's like, what have you broken now? I can't even leave you alone for a minute. And then she thinks she saw a prank, but it isn't. And then she sees Jeff's head in the fish tank, because she had the fish tank. That was cool. So then the guy's wearing the creepy mask, which really made him creepy. And he attacks her, and he rapes her and chokes her with a belt. And, you know, pretty much molests her, I guess. Told you, this movie's sick. What else happens next? Jane's back at her boyfriend David's house, and they're talking about her sister, because who later we find out its name is Tracy, and she's I guess I don't really know what they were fighting about. I think they were fighting about him moving in or him wanting to communicate with Tracy, because but she's afraid that she'll leave him if he does, if she does. And we find out the guy's a lawyer, but he's like a criminal lawyer, so he's on like prohibition, I think it's called. So then Jane comes home and she sees this random guy, and he parks in his parking spot and he takes his.
How do you get ready?
How come?
You need to call one of your mothers.
Yeah, you didn't call me or nothing yet, though.
I think she said she called Mary.
When's she coming?
I don't know. When's your mother coming on, Mary?
Alright, well, I'm just going to continue while I'm waiting. So what happened, so she sees this random guy just get out of his car, and he changes his, suit, just gets dressed right outside, and they're in like a parking garage, because they're in a hotel, because they live in an apartment, and, he had like blood stains on his clothes, he wasn't wearing a belt, so I think you can see where this is going. If you don't, then you're gonna find out later on, actually, because I guess you can't see where this is going. So then we meet Tracy, and we find out she's deafblind. She's pretty much like Helen Keller, and we're gonna find out how, because she wasn't born this way. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but you shouldn't even be watching this if you haven't seen the movie and you want to see it anyways. So it's your own fault. So she does the sign language, all that crap. But Tracy's badass. She can make toast. She can do the laundry. I mean, and this is kind of getting ahead, but she can swim, and she can like turn the corner of the pool. That's pretty cool. And she has a dog too. We never find out his name, but she has a dog that if she needs him. So that was cool. Tracy's just pretty much badass and hot. So that was cool. So then what happens next? So yeah, the earlier date. So this is back at the current scene. David is just shows up, and And the reason why I think Tracy also can do all this stuff is because she lives in an apartment and she has to have everything a certain way because that's the way she's used to it. She has like the chair a certain way, and you're gonna find out why. Why I'm saying that now, so, because you know, and then so yeah, then David's like, I really want to learn how to talk with her, and Jane's trying to make up excuse not to. It's like it takes time, and she's like, no more excuses, you promised. So then pretty much this like murder rapist thing is getting to Jane. She just can't help but overcome it, and Dave tells her not to worry about it. It's not your fault. They're gonna catch this guy, and then they go on the new, and the guy, actually, I should mention that Tracy saw, Jane saw earlier, was one of the camera guys on the news thing, because I went back and rewatched it, and I noticed he was one of the camera guys. And what else happens here? Oh, so then she finds out they talk about the two murders, how the detectives found them, and pretty much everything that happened that I just talked about. And they say that every woman isn't, and Jane just continues to talk about how every woman isn't safe, even if you think you are, you aren't, because she's just really concerned about this. And there was two guys watching, like, that worked with the camera crew. It's like, oh, here she goes again. That was funny. So then, and they played this creepy music anytime we saw this guy, which I thought really helped the movie. It was actually really awesome music. I can't really play it for you, but if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So then, this was awesome. Jane gets the parking space of the guy, the mystery guy that she saw earlier. We find out his name is Stanley Herbert. I think that's how you say his name. His last name, anyways, Herbert. I think that's how you say it. And they're like, and we find out they're not neighbors, but the apartment has like two buildings, and he's like right across from her, if that makes sense. I actually never seen it. I think I have before, but it's really weird that happens. So she gets kind of suspicious about it. And then we see we see this person just working, and she's using a typewriter because I don't think they had computers then. She was listening to music, I think, and I kind of because she had headphones on, so I'm not really sure. And she hears the phone ring, so you can see where this is going. And the guy's like, the guy pretty much threatens her again, and then she says, "Why don't you stick it in your ears, huh?" And then he's like, "I'd like to stick something in you." So that was kind of a creepy, funny line. So then, when she picks up the phone again, they play this music box kind of music. And he's like, "This is our song." And she's like, "Why don't you leave me alone? I'm not interested." So then she gets really creeped out when he calls again. And then we find out this girl's name's Annette, and she calls her friend Susan. She talks about how she's creeped out, doesn't want to call the police because she doesn't want any trouble. So she's going to go over this girl's house. And then she goes to leave, and the guy calls her, because we still technically don't know who it is. We still are supposed to believe that it's Stanley, but technically we don't know who it is. And the guy calls her through the elevator. Now, I didn't know you could do something like that. I don't know if you still could today. I don't know how he called, because I thought you can only make phone calls out of the elevator. Because there was a phone in there if you need it, but I thought you can only make phone calls if you're out, if you're in the elevator. But I didn't know you could receive them, so I think that's pretty weird. She gets really creeped out when this happens, and then she tries to leave. She gets in her car, and the guy attacks her and kills her. And then later on, he dumps her body in the woods. And in the mud. I'm saying this because this gets important. And the the murderer tries to drive away, but car gets stuck in the mud. Now, I don't really think it was stuck in the mud, because then we see this two couple who are having sex in the car. Realizes that this is gonna bug us, so he's like, I'm gonna go give this guy a push. So then the guy tries to do it, and then the murderer uses his pocket knife, and he's like, hey, I think you could use a push. And then he cuts his throat, and then he kills the girl in the car later on. So I think he saw them, and maybe realizes that they could be like, I mean, this is what I'm thinking, because I think he was able to get out he could have just gotten out just fine, because when the guy popped up, he just immediately went for his pocket knife. So I think this is what I'm thinking. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what I'm thinking. I think the guy saw these people, realized that that they could be witnesses to the crime. So he killed him off, so that way he wouldn't know. I thought it was pretty badass that he did that too. And the gore looked amazing. Amazing. So then, before this had happened, though, Jane was talking to David about this murder case, and talks about all this suspicious stuff, and he pretty much is able to find an answer, like the stains on the shirt. He's like, so he's a slob, because he's a lawyer, and he's like, I could just have this guy out of jail in a second. And he's like, but then he says that he will make a mistake, because guys like this always make a mistake. I guess one of the mistakes would be leaving the body out in the open, but technically I guess that wasn't a mistake, because he killed the only two people that would have seen it. So then, what happens in that? So then he's also concerned about Jane, that she's torturing herself with this. So then when Jane comes home the next day, she sees that Stanley's car, because it's actually Stanley, is all muddy. So then I think you're supposed to really think that it's him. So then she calls like the place where you would get people's phone numbers, and says, I want the number for Stanley Herbert. And the person just gives it to her. I was like, okay. Now, they will just do that nowadays, but if you're thinking, if it's all over the news that people are getting raped and all that stuff, why would wouldn't you want to be a little bit suspicious? I'm just saying. It's something I actually been forgetting to mention. How Tracy's deafblind, because I actually forgot to mention that. So they cut earlier in the movie. They had cut to a flashback of young Jane and young Tracy when they were kids. And Jane was just we see this guy. We technically don't know who it is. I think we're supposed to know that it's the same guy now, but we just don't technically know that. And he follows the bus because he was hanging out at the school, and he's just hanging out at the school. And what happens here? So then it was a common sense thing too, because kind of a common sense thing. So then Jane is with one of her friends, and she's like, Tracy, you stay here. So she does so. I don't know why she listened, but. And then she sees the guy, and the guy kidnaps her. And we find out later on that he beat the crap out of her so bad that he didn't kill her. I don't know how he failed. I guess, I just kind of wonder how he failed. But he beat the crap out of her so bad that she became deafblind. They don't know why. Her brain's fine. They just don't know why she's like that. The reason I actually don't even know how that's possible either. But whatever. I guess maybe he beat the crap out of her so bad she couldn't see it or anything. And Jane obviously feels guilty about this because she feels like it's her fault. I guess you could see that it is, because if she didn't make her stay there. But, I mean, it could have happened to anybody. I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know. And these were both flashbacks. that had happened, and her parents are concerned about it. Then what happens next? So then later on, Jane finds out about Annette's murder, and talks about the mud tracks. And when she goes to see the car, she finds out it's all clean. So I guess Stanley cleaned it beforehand. So she really wants to get evidence now. So she clogs up the juice machine with gum. And she goes to tell Jimmy, and he's like the manager, about it. And he grabs all these keys and he leaves the chest open where she can get the keys, which was a dumb move. And she grabs Stanley's key and she does a little bit of a snooping, and Stanley isn't there, so.
Who's the pants you're gonna wear?
I don't know. Yeah, I wear those pants.
Did you do your homework?
Yeah. So then Jane's like, well, okay. So then Jane just searches around for anything, evidence. Eventually, and she finds a cuckoo clock. And why I'm mentioning this is because this gets important, and it's in a stupid way. So then Jane finds Stanley's muddy shoes, which makes her suspicious. So then Stanley comes home, and she's not out of the house yet, so it's like, oh crap. And she's still in the closet, and he puts his coat in the closet, and I guess she wasn't there anymore, so. And we find out she got out by getting out through the balcony. And she goes into somebody else's house. And then she just comes in, and then these two couples, and she's like, excuse me. I was like, what? I was like, that was kind of dumb. What else happens next? Everything's all at once. I mean, I'm trying to go as order as I can, but. So then I guess, let me think. Because I think something else happened. She interviews Susan, talks about everything that happened, and she talks about the music box. And then she says, she asked, the guy, I think Roger, and asks, can cuckoo clocks make music? She's like, I don't know, possibly. And then he's like, why? Just wondering. And I didn't like where this was going. So I'm assuming she's thinking that the music box, was this is what I'm thinking. The music how could this be possible? Because there's no cell phones at the time. And when the murderer was talking to her, and if she thinks it's Stanley, he wasn't even at his house, so, and it's not like, unless the only way is he had a tape recorder and he tape recorded it, that's the only way I can see, but I don't know. It's just dumb. And what happens next? Unless the place was really close too. But he was in the woman's car, so I don't know. That was just a dumb scene. So then David and Jane are at the movies, and she tells him that she has Stanley's muddy shoe, and she tells him about this during the movie, so everyone keeps shushing them, and she wants him to have it be examined by the police. And then he's going to be like, well, how am I going to explain how I got it? Because you just went and broke into somebody's house and stole it. What am I going to tell them? And then she says, well, you should stop being an attorney and start trusting me. Then he says, well, you need to stop being a reporter because you're going nuts. You're driving in too deep and you're going to get yourself hurt. And she really wants to do this, one, to prove that she's right. And two, because Tracy's home often alone at night, because I think that's when she's doing the news show. So that's why she also wants to do it. All right. So then, so then she goes home and she bought a gun, which was a smart move because in case Stanley comes in there or whoever the murderer is. And then she calls Stanley. Now this was a stupid move. And then he answers, and for a while she doesn't say anything. And she was smoking a cigarette, which really made it look awesome that she was doing this. And then she says, it sucks being on the other end of the conversation, and she calls him a phone freak, and this is also important. And then, what else does she say here? That she wants to be that she needs to stop, that he should turn himself in, or she's gonna keep calling him pretty much. She pretty much just keeps calling him and threatening him, and he gets pissed off eventually. So then Stanley, now we know it's him because he finds this random, I guess, stripper, and kills her. And we know it's him at this point. I don't really think it was really a surprise because when we would see him, it was totally obviously him because it was like built like him. You could totally see his face. And he totally looked like it could be him because he totally looks like the murderer. And then the next day, he's watching the news, the show that Jane does. And he was actually, Stanley also too was like I said, he was the background guy, so I thought that was kind of awesome that it was him. And then she says, she talks about what happens and says no one's safe, and then she mentions phone freak, and that made him realize that she was the one that called him. So then he sees Tracy out on the porch, so you don't really, you know where this is going. So then Jane leaves. She goes to, you're gonna find out where she goes, and then Tracy sets the dog food up to feed the dog, and she tries to clap because she has to clap to get his attention, and we find out Stanley killed him. And she also gets before that, Jane got a phone call, and he left, and she has a voicemail, and we find out that David had the mud tube tested, and it's a match. So we find out it really is him at this point, and then like we already didn't know. So then she tries to keep clapping for this dog, and then when she walks back, the chair that I had mentioned that has to be a certain way, Stanley obviously pulled the chair so that way she tripped, and that happened. So she's like, what the hell just happened? So then she just pushes the chair, doesn't think anything of it. But then we see Stanley's there, and Jane and Tracy's trying to make some sort of cake or dessert for herself. And as she's doing this, she puts it on a plate, and he keeps moving the plates. He moves this knife, and that was pretty awesome stuff. So I think Tracy just realized. So he's trying to get inside Tracy's head, and she realizes that something's wrong. So she tries to leave, but he blocks the door, and he starts to kiss her, and then she grabs a knife, and then Tracy goes back into the kitchen, tries to grab a knife to fend for herself, but he fights her off and tries to rape her, and then she throws coffee in his face. And then Jane's being an idiot, trying to see about this cuckoo clock that really means nothing, because there's no cell phones, no nothing, so I don't know what her obsession with this cuckoo clock is. Because technically, if she didn't go to this cuckoo clock, Tracy would be okay. And then they go into Jane's room. She hides in the closet. He finds her. She tries to rape her, and then she finds and as they're having like a big struggle, Jane sees that Stanley's there. So she's like, "Oh, Tracy!" So she's gonna go save her, and she's like at the other building, so it's gonna be tough for her to get there in time. Like we're supposed to believe she's not gonna get there. So then Jane grabs her gun. Tracy grabs Jane's gun that she bought, and she shoots Stanley in the ribs, and she can kind of see him, so I think she got her sight back, sort of. And she like can see herself in the mirror when we think that Stanley's dead. And Stanley isn't dead though. He tries to attack her, and then Jane comes in, just shoots him in the head, and then she's like, "Oh, Tracy." And then Tracy. This is the only line she has. She says, "Jane." So she finally said something. I think she can talk now, which I think was cool. And that was the end of the movie. The movie's good. I really think it's a good movie, but there's a lot of stupid stuff that happens, like the cuckoo clock stuff. Like a lot of stuff that you can just point, like how they keep answering the phone after the guy keeps calling over and over again. I don't know. But, David's acting was pretty terrible, too, actually. The guy that played David, I didn't really like his acting. That was about it, though. So, while I'm here, I'm going to go over the cast, because I actually have the credits and the cast shows up, so I'm going to go over the cast real quick. So the cast, Jane is played by Lauren Tewies. I think also what I didn't like about this movie was so predictable that it was Stanley, that they just made it so openly. That would be about it, though. Tracy's played by Jennifer Jason Leigh. Stanley Hebert is played by John DeSante. David is played by Peter Dupuis. He was terrible in this movie. Debbie is played by Gwen Lewis. Annette's played by Kitty Lunn. Jeff's played by Timothy Hawkins. Roger England is played by Ted Richard. Yeah, that's I think how you say that. Mona's played by Tony Crabtree. Wow, that's really weird. Dr. Bob is the doctor that finds out that what's wrong with Tracy. He's played by Bob Small. The dancer, that's the stripper that Stanley killed, is played by Stella Rivera. The bartender, Al, is played by Dan Fitzgerald. Oh, actually, that sounds like a familiar name. Jimmy, who's the owner, is played by Rose. Bob Mandy, I don't know how to say his last name. The tape editor. I think the tape editor is when because anytime Stanley would call, it wouldn't be his voice. It would be like a weird voice. So I think that's what the tape editor, and it's played by Luke Halpin. The woman in the car that was having sex that Stanley killed with the pocket knife was played by Rona Flynn, and then the man was played by Tony Federico. The photographer in the beginning was played by Alan Lee. The young Jade was played by Amy Krug. Young Tracy was played by Tabitha Tracy, which I think that's so weird that her last name's Tracy. The friend, I believe, is Susan, was played by Sarah Hutchinson. Okay, I think only one more. I'm gonna say two more because there's really nothing else. The father, Jane and Tracy's parents. Mother is played by Gillian Lindig, and the father is played by George D. Veras. Is there any other people I need to say? Oh no, Susan. I don't know who the friend is then, but Susan is played by Pate Warren. So that's about it. I think that's really all I need to say. If you want to check out this movie, then yeah, you feel free to do so. But that's pretty much it, guys. I'll be back to do another movie review tomorrow. And so that's pretty much it, guys. See you later.